Join us by way of technology. We are studying the book of 3 John, starting a study of 3 John tonight. We wrapped up 1 John a few weeks ago, then 2 John last week, and so now it's time for John number 3, if you will. And as always, when we start looking at a Bible book, we spend several minutes at least sort of getting a feel for it and introducing the book, I guess you might say, and this ought to be fairly easy to us. This introduction, part of it at least, ought to be fairly easy to us. And so I'm going to ask a few questions tonight. And one question is going to be, 3 John is one of the one-chapter books of the Bible. How many one-chapter books in the Bible are there in all? 5. And they are Obadiah in the Old Testament, 2 John, 3 John, Jude, Philemon. Okay, so 1 in the Old Testament, 4 in the New Testament. Now, when we studied 2 John, we said that 2 John is the shortest book in the Bible, and we said that question is both true and false. You know, some questions are not yes and no. Or some questions cannot be truthfully answered yes or no. You know, a lot of people want to say this is a yes or no question. There are other factors to consider sometimes, and when we say that 2 John is the shortest book of the Bible, it is verse-wise, but it is not word-wise. 3 John is actually the shortest book in the Bible if you count the words. There are 293 words in 3 John, even though it has one more verse than 2 John, it has more words. So that is neither here nor there as far as salvation is concerned. But if somebody asks you that trivia question about the Bible, you'll be ready. You'll be ready with more than one answer on that one. Again, if you look at 2 and 3 John, they don't take up a whole page in my Bible. In fact, I think they both could fit on the same page in my Bible. It's a bit smaller print, so they're very short. Written by the same person, similar ideas, words, phrases. And again, as we've said with 2 John, these two could be called twin sisters. 2 and 3 John are a lot alike. So always, whenever we begin studying a Bible book, we ask questions. Who wrote it? To whom did he write it? When did he write it? Where did he write it from? And then why did he write it? So the first question, of course, is who wrote it? And the answer is, obviously, John. He designates himself how in verse 1? The elder, which is exactly how he began 2 John. If you look at both of them, 2 John starts off with the elder, 3 John starts off with the elder. He does not have his name anywhere in the letter. He does not address himself as an apostle. Unlike Peter and Paul, they both would address many of their letters identifying themselves as apostles. But he just refers to himself as the elder. As we studied in 2 John, we noted that there are a number of different views, I guess you might say, as to what he means by the elder. There are some who say that when John refers to himself as the elder, he's talking about being an elder in the church. And one issue with that is he calls himself the elder, not an elder. We would think, as Peter addressed himself as an elder, because the congregation is supposed to have more than one elder, correct? And so that might be an issue if John's talking about being in the office of the eldership. One elder is not above another elder, but that may not be the meaning here. Also, the elder could simply refer to his what? His age. He's an older man. He's an older man writing to younger members. And so as of this writing, I don't know that John's 100, like Miss Marie will be, Lord willing, but he's getting on up there in age. And so he's an older man and most of the people to whom he's writing are younger than he. And some take the view that he's talking about himself being the elder as the last surviving apostle. Well, I don't know that there's much evidence for that, and that's another thing that really doesn't matter in the long run. So, John wrote this letter. John wrote how many letters in the New Testament? How many letters? And what are they? 5 letters. John, 1 John, 2 John, 3 John, and Revelation. All right, so we ought to have that down by now. And we might not have to go over all that again when we get to Revelation. We should have all that down by now. All right, so John wrote it. Now, to whom did he write the letter? However you want to pronounce it, right? G-A-I-U-S. I'm going to say Gaius. Guys, however you want to pronounce it. It was a very common name in Bible times. I don't know a soul today named Gaius. Do you? I'm sure there's one somewhere. With all the different names we have in our world and culture, there's probably a Gaius somewhere. It was a very common name. It was as common then as Jim and Bob are today, and Mary and Sue. They were very, very common name. Let's look at some of these other fellows in the Bible named Gaius. Let's look at Acts first of all. Let's turn back to Acts. We're going to get to 3 John 1, but it's not going to be for a little bit. We're talking about Gaius. John wrote this letter to a man named Gaius. Acts 19:29. Paul is in the city of Ephesus, and things aren't going well at all. There is, in essence, a riot. We would call this a riot in the city of Ephesus because, again, Paul's preaching against idolatry and Diana and those people who made trinkets and made their living off of making idols for Diana. Well, they're upset because they've lost their money. And so they stir everybody up. In Acts 19:29, the whole city was filled with confusion. And they caught Gaius and Aristarchus, men of Macedonia, Paul's companions in travel. So they get a hold of 2 of these men, one of whom was Gaius. He was from Macedonia, and he accompanied Paul, at least on this missionary journey. We would call him a missionary. So that's one Gaius. Turn the page of the chapter to Acts 20 and verse 4. Now the Gaius in Acts 19 is Gaius of Macedonia. The Gaius in Acts 20 verse 4 is Gaius from where? Derbe. I think of Derbe, I think of a hat. But this Derbe is a town, a city. And so the Gaius of Acts 19 is most likely not the same Gaius of Acts 20. And then in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, somebody was thankful that he didn't baptize any at Corinth, save 2. Who was that somebody he was thankful he didn't baptize? Paul. And it wasn't that he was against baptizing, obviously, but part of the problem in Corinth was you had different factions and following different men. And some said, I'm going to follow the man who baptized me. Instead of following the Lord, I'm going to follow Paul. He baptized me, was the thinking. So I'm glad I didn't baptize. And who was he glad he didn't baptize? Who actually, let me rephrase, who did he baptize? Crispus and Gaius, verse 14. Okay, so there is another Gaius. And same page opening my Bible, the last chapter in Romans 16:23, Paul speaks of Gaius, my host. In other words, he put him up there in Corinth. So we've got Gaius of Macedonia, Gaius of Derbe, and Gaius of Corinth. And the question is, were any of those 3 the same Gaius that John wrote 3 John to? And our answer is what? We don't know. Probably not. Many think probably not the same Gaius because this Gaius is going to be a convert of John's and not the Apostle Paul. So again, again, that's really not a salvation issue, but we're getting a feel for who this individual by the name of Gaius is. We're going to find out that he is a man of benevolence. He is a man who loves the truth and lives the truth. 3 John, John wrote it. John the Apostle wrote it. He wrote it to a man, a Christian man, a good Christian man named Gaius. A third question we ask when we talk about a Bible book is when it was written. And again, our pat answer is we just don't know for certain. It's not a salvation issue. Most believe John wrote this near the end of his life, and that would have been somewhere in the neighborhood of the year AD 80 or 90. We're familiar with the letters AD, BC, and AD. BC means before Christ. AD means not after Christ, but in the year of our Lord. And if you read much history today or certain dates that people give today, instead of using BC and AD, they use what letters? And I forgot myself. BCE, the common error, CE is a common error, and BCE is before the common error. Not wanting to allude to whom? The Lord. We don't want to allude to the Lord. We don't believe in this Jesus, so we certainly don't want to name our time by Jesus, so they use different letters. But probably 3 John written near the end of John's life. We don't know where he wrote it from, or better English, I guess, from where he wrote it. Some say maybe the same place he wrote Revelation on the island of Patmos. A better question to ask is why he wrote it. Now, one reason, of course, he wrote it is God inspired him to. But beyond that, 3 John is written about 3 men. There are 3 men predominantly mentioned in 3 John, and the letter revolves around those 3. The first man, obviously, is Gaius. And we're going to see that Gaius, he wrote Gaius to just pat him on the back for the great job he was doing, being faithful and hospitable. Keep up the good work, Gaius. That's one reason he wrote 3 John. A second reason he wrote 3 John was addressed to Diotrephes, who doesn't get a pat on the back at all. He gets a strong rebuke for being arrogant and loving preeminence. So he wrote Gaius to pat him on the back for a great job he was doing. He wrote to Diotrephes, or about Diotrephes at least, to rebuke him for his arrogance. And then the third man is verse 12, Demetrius. He wrote this letter to, again, pat Demetrius on the back, who, like Gaius, was a faithful Christian. And John will say, Gaius, you need to follow this Demetrius. Follow his example, because he's a good man. So again, this letter revolves around those 3 men, Gaius, Diotrephes, and Demetrius. You may have had thoughts similar to mine. I've often thought it would have been great to have lived in the 1st century, because the church certainly did not have many problems then. The church wasn't that old as of writing 3 John, and so it would have been great to be part of a congregation that didn't have problems. Well, old Wayne needs to rethink, doesn't he? I mean, you read, and we're going to, in our invitation tonight, talk about the church of Corinth. It was only a few years old, and did they ever have problems? And the situation here, you've got problems in the church. Where you've got people, you've got what? Problems. Where there are people, there are problems. That's just the nature of the beast, I guess you might say. And so there were problems in the 1st century, and there are problems, of course, today. And if there are problems in the church, I need to ask myself, am I part of the problem? Or am I part of the solution? Am I part of the answer? If there are problems, I need to look first of all to myself. Am I part of the problem? If I am, then Wayne needs to straighten himself up, and that'll help then with the problem. So things were not ideal in the church, even in the 1st century. Now, having studied 2 John, we now study 3 John, just a few similarities and contrasts before we get started. 2 John was not written to a man, but to a woman or a lady and her children. I believe a specific woman, not the church, but again, that's neither here nor there. 3 John's written to a man and men acquainted with him. 2 John, the predominant problem was, a lady was receiving the wrong kind of travelers. 3 John, the problem is, a man is rejecting the right kind of travelers. 2 John, the lady was just welcoming anybody who knocked on her door, claiming to be a missionary, and in the process she was being hospitable to false teachers. That was the problem. She's receiving the wrong kind of strangers. 3 John, Diotrephes, is a man rejecting the right kind. I said strangers, travelers is the word I should have used. He's rejecting the right kind of travelers. 2 John, it's a matter of misplaced hospitality. 3 John, it's a matter of missing hospitality. 2 John, the need was truth to balance love. 3 John, the need is love to balance truth. So those are some contrasts and likenesses between the both. This is a letter. The word epistle means letter. And we have in the form of this short letter, the form of first century letters, a greeting, a prayer, the main body of the letter, and then a conclusion, a goodbye. So we'll look at 3 John in that light. We're going to outline 3 John according to the 3 men. Encouragement of Gaius, verses 1 to 8, criticism of Diotrephes, verses 9 and 10, and then the example of Demetrius, verses 12 through 14. And we won't, for obvious reasons, cover all of that tonight. Let's start then now in verse 1. And Adam, if you will, read for us verses 1 to 4. 3 John 1 to 4.
The elder unto the well-beloved Gaius, whom I love in the truth. Beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospereth. For I rejoiced greatly when the brethren came and testified of the truth that is in thee, even as thou walkest in the truth. I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth.
All right, so Adam's read a lot in just those first 4 verses. So again, first of all, the elder. I don't believe he's talking about the office of eldership, but an older man. We live in a time where people make fun of getting older. And they make fun of those who are, in their minds, ancient. And in the process, those who do that forget 2 things. One thing is if they live long enough, what? They're going to be in the category they're making fun of now. They're going to be older. We've heard the phrase, the chickens come home to roost. Well, that's what's going to happen to these folks. What goes around comes around. Life has a way of getting even. So, I try not to make fun. We pick at one another. Now, there's a difference in picking at somebody and making fun of somebody. You pick at people you love. You don't make fun of people that you love. So if I'm, and I've done that, I guess, growing up, and now I'm in that category of getting older. So those who make fun of people who are getting older or older forget that one day they'll be older if they live long enough. And the second thing they forget is that God greatly honors older people. You can read several verses in the Bible where God himself placed a great amount of esteem. In Leviticus 19, he says, you shall stand up before the gray head and honor the face of an old man. Makes us feel good, doesn't it? Honor the face of an old man. Don't make fun of him. And you shall fear your God. So part of fearing God is respecting the older. I know people may not see it like that, but that's Leviticus 19:32. But again, the getting older thing just seems to frighten us, and we fight it with every fiber of our being, correct? I'm told that we now spend more money to fight the aging process than we do to fight disease. I read an article. We spend more money to fight the aging process than to fight disease. And so some people have surgery, some people do this and do that, wrinkle remover, whatever. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But the fact of the matter is, I may look 35 years old, but if I'm 90 years old, I'm 90 years old. That's just the fact of the matter. We want to look young, I guess, but we ought not be ashamed of getting older. I was at Dad and Mom's last week, and they've got a big box of old pictures. And I got that thing out, and their memory's not quite as sharp as it used to be, and you want to sort of see if they remember some of those old photographs, and most of them they did. I found some old pictures of me when I was a little boy, and couldn't hardly believe it was me. Couldn't hardly believe we didn't wear many clothes back then. We lived out in the country, and I mean, people didn't come down our road, so we didn't have much clothes on. I was 5 years old, but barefoot and didn't wear a shirt and had on shorts and photos that I would not share with you. Let me put it to you like that. And so it doesn't seem like it's been that long ago that Little Wayne was Little Wayne, and now Little Wayne is 63 years young. It passes by fast. John was not ashamed to be an older man. In fact, he addressed himself as the elder. I'm an older man. You may be younger, but I'm an older man. He's not ashamed of that. We ought not be either. Again, he addresses Gaius how? What term does he use? Well, beloved, or you may have a different translation that says beloved. 3 of the first 11 words of the letter refer to love. Well, beloved, love, and beloved, verse 2. So there's no question that John loves Gaius, but well, beloved would not fit every Bible character. Would the Apostle Paul have said of Alexander the coppersmith, would he have described him as well beloved? He would not. He said, he did me much evil. The Lord reward him according to his works. Would Paul have described Demas? Would he have used the word Demas and well beloved in the same sentence? Demas fell in love with the present world, didn't he? And left Paul when Paul needed him. And Diotrephes, we're going to see later there in verse 9, he does not put the word well beloved before the name Diotrephes. It's not that Paul hated any of these or John hated any of these, but again, some adjectives don't go with some people. But well beloved fits with this man named Gaius, and he had a warm relationship with John. Notice he says of Gaius, I love him in the truth. If my count is correct, we have the word truth about 4 times in the first 4 verses. I think 6 times in all in 3 John. I love him in the truth. We have the truth in common. People a lot of times will love others or buddy up with others if they have the same interest. People who collect coins, a lot of them will have their buddies. Collect stamps, will have their buddies, and they'll meet and compare notes and stamps and coins and so forth. They have that in common. Some love one another because of the same interest. So people have fishing buddies and hunting buddies. That's something they have in common. John loved Gaius because of the truth. And there's no greater love than for both to be in the truth. Both were Christians, and they are numbered with a number of elite people like those in Hebrews 11. People of faith, and those people were there in Hebrews 11 not by accident, but because of their love for the truth. And may God say the same of us, that we love one another because of the truth. All right, now verse 2. Again, notice the phrase beloved. He just said it in verse 1. But for repetition purposes and to show emphasis on the admiration he has for this man. Beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospereth. What does it mean to wish for something? What's another word for wish? Hope. Different translation. Pray, okay? Sometimes the word wish means hope, but here it's a stronger term. Desire, I pray My prayer is for you. And my prayer is, and it's an unusual prayer, I guess, in some respects. Gaius, I want you to prosper financially, and I want you to be as well physically, even as you are spiritually. Which tells us that Gaius was well off spiritually, correct? That's what John is saying here. I want you to prosper. It is not wrong to wish good things for other people, is it? It is not wrong to wish good things for other people. It is not wrong to be well off financially. It's not fair, but it's nothing wrong with being well off financially. A lot of us don't think it's fair. That's just the way life is. Somebody asked the question, how rich may one safely become? And the answer, as rich as his soul. You may become as rich safely as your soul is rich. If I am richer financially than my soul is rich, old Wayne's got a problem. He's got a big problem. That's what he's saying of Gaius here. Gaius evidently was not prospering financially. There's a problem there, and maybe through no fault of his own, just life. I wish you were as well off financially as you are spiritually. So he had maybe some business problems or money problems. And evidently he also had some what problems? Health problems. I wish you would be as well health-wise as you are spiritually speaking. Is it wrong to have health problems? I hope not, because we all have them, don't we? We all have health problems. Can you think of godly men in the Bible who had health problems and it wasn't their fault? Anybody? Job? Now, Job's friends thought what? You wouldn't be suffering if you hadn't done something wrong. They labeled Job's calamities as a result of his own sins, and God said, you're wrong. Job was actually suffering because he was a good man. So all suffering is not due to sin. Now, a question that comes to my mind, maybe yours too. Now, John is an apostle, correct? That means he had what kind of powers? He had miraculous powers. He had the ability to heal. He had the ability to heal people. So the logical question to ask is what? Why didn't John heal Gaius? He had the power to do it. They were friends. And the answer, as we know, is this. Miracles in the Bible were not primarily for the purpose of helping people. Now, they did help people. Miracles in the Bible were primarily for what purpose? To produce faith. To produce faith in the speaker. They couldn't have a completed Bible to sit down and study and compare what John said to the Bible because it hadn't been completed yet. And so these men of God needed miraculous signs to show I'm really from God. Nobody could duplicate these except men were from God. Now today, Wayne does not need miraculous powers. He doesn't have miraculous powers because you have a completed Bible to sit down and compare what Wayne is saying to the Bible and know whether or not Wayne is saying what God is saying or not. So the primary purpose for healing people then was not to heal people, but to produce faith. We also know that the apostles could not use their powers apart from God's will. They could not use their miraculous powers to heal unless it was God's will. Who was the young man who had some stomach problems? Timothy. Paul had the power to heal Timothy, but it wasn't God's will for that to happen. And so, Timothy, don't drink water any longer for your stomach's problems. What? Drink wine. Okay? And that for medicinal purposes. You've got some health issues, then use that for that purpose. But Paul did not heal Timothy. Trophimus was another friend of Paul and a Christian. Paul said on one occasion, I left him back at Miletum sick. I'm sure he would have much rather Trophimus come along with him on that journey, but it wasn't God's will. It simply wasn't God's will. Paul had a what in the flesh he would like to have gotten rid of? A thorn in the flesh. He had miraculous powers, but God did not allow him to use those miraculous powers to get rid of the thorn. So Gaius has some health problems. And keep in mind, all these men we mentioned eventually did what anyway? Even if they were made well, they eventually died anyway. So these powers were just temporary in nature. What these men could do and what we can do is pray. Now that's what we can do and what John did on this occasion. I am praying. I'm praying for you. I wish you were as well off financially and physically as you are spiritually. Yes, ma'am.
I used to know this, but where does it say that the miracles come?
1 Corinthians 13 and verse 10, I believe it is. When that which is perfect is come, then that which is part shall be done away. And you have to study the context of that. But that would be the one of the references for that. 13 verse 10. 1 Corinthians 13 verse 10. Now, could this, what John is saying of Gaius here, could this be said of most? Could you pray this for most? I wish you were as well off financially and physically as you are well off spiritually. For most people, it's the exact reverse, correct? It's the exact reverse. John's concerned about the whole man. Now the soul is right. The soul is number one. And Gaius had his priorities in perspective. But the question for us on this verse is, if we prospered financially and physically to the same proportion as we're prospering spiritually, would we be rich and healthy? Or would we be bankrupt and on our deathbed? That's something to think about. This fellow Gaius is a fine fellow. And John says, you're doing great. And there are some things in your life where you're struggling, and I'm praying for you financially, and I'm praying for you physically. I'd like for you to be well off in all three ways, but I'm glad, number one, that your soul is prospering. Now we'll cover one more verse, verse 3. This is John talking and commending. Not buttering up or flattering. He's just telling the sincere truth about this man. I rejoiced greatly when the brethren came and testified of the truth that is in thee. Who these brothers are, we don't know. And they have come to John and they give a glowing report of Gaius. And it causes just great joy in John's heart for a lot of reasons. One is, if Gaius is a convert of John's, somebody that you have helped lead to the truth and you don't see for years, and you hear from or about them years later, what do you want to hear? They're still in the church. They're still growing. That's what you want to hear. You don't want to hear, well, I never see them. They just sort of living like the world, and you don't want to hear that. So I don't know how long it's been since John has seen or heard from Gaius, but brothers, whomever they are, have been to Gaius. They come back and again give this glowing report of this man. And the report they give is, what do they find in Gaius? The truth, correct? Testified of the truth that is in you, in Gaius. The question is, how did those Christians know the truth was in Gaius? Did he have a sign on his shirt saying truth? Did he have a yard sign saying truth resides here? How did they know that Gaius had the truth in him? He lived it. That's exactly right. In fact, that's the end of the verse, isn't it? You walk in the truth. They knew that Gaius had the truth in him because he walked in it, because he lived in it. The only way that we can know if the truth is in anybody is by, yes, listening to what they say, but more than that, seeing how they live. I'd rather do what to a sermon than to Hear one any day? I'd rather see a sermon than to hear one any day. And there's nothing wrong with hearing sermons. But I want to see, you want to see, Wayne gets up there and preaches and Adam does, you want to see us living it. And if we don't live it, you're going to tune us out to what we have to say. The only way you're going to know if the truth is in anybody is how they live. Are they living the truth? James says, I will show you my faith. How? By my works. By my life. We're going to drive a peg here. We're out of time. We'll pick up in verse 4, Lord willing, next Wednesday evening. 3 John, verse number 4.